Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story reveals a deeper truth. In today's episode, Vesak reaction. Young people must react to Buddhist teachings. We step into the hearts and minds of the next generation as they encounter ancient wisdom for the first time. What happens when stillness meets a restless world? Let's find out. 1. First contact. When young hearts touch the breath of the Dharma on the morning of Vesak, as the sun slowly rises over the tiled rooftops of a small village temple, a young girl sits quietly among others, her eyes not yet trained in meditation, her breath still shallow and uncertain. Around her, the soft murmur of monks chanting in Pali, the warm scent of incense curling into the air, and the flicker of candlelight catching on golden Buddha statues, all create an atmosphere unfamiliar, yet oddly calming. She has never been to a Vesak ceremony before. She does not know what to expect, but something within her is curious, stirred, listening. For many young people today, this first contact with the teachings of the Buddha does not arrive through sacred texts or formal sermons. It comes in moments, in a line of poetry glimpsed on a poster, in the kind gaze of a teacher who walks mindfully, in the silence of a hall where people have gathered not to speak, but to breathe together. The entry point is not necessarily understanding, but something more tender, presence. There is a quiet reverence in the way the Buddha's story is retold each Vesak. The young girl hears that he was born under the shade of a sala tree, that he took 7 steps upon the earth, and with one hand pointed to the heavens, the other to the earth, declared, "Above the heavens and below the earth, I alone am the honored one." She furrows her brow. The words are strange to her ears. Is it pride? Is it power? And yet, the monk explains that what the Buddha declared was not arrogance, but awakening, that each of us has the capacity to wake up to our own true nature. The honored one is not just Siddhartha Gautama. The honored one is the awareness in each of us that knows how to love, how to breathe, how to come home. Her breath catches. Something moves inside her chest. She doesn't yet have the language for it, but she feels it, a kind of warmth, a space opening in a world where young people are taught to be fast, to scroll, to achieve, to compare. The teachings of the Buddha land like snowflakes on a hot sidewalk, so quiet, so light, and yet so startlingly real. Suffering exists. The monk says gently, but it is not the end of the story. There is a path. This too feels strange, because no one has told her before that it's okay to suffer, that suffering is not a failure or a flaw, that it is simply part of being human. In that moment, she thinks about her own silent battles, the pressure to succeed, the loneliness she sometimes carries like a backpack no one sees, the arguments at home she does not speak, but her heart leans closer. Another young person, a teenage boy, who came reluctantly at the invitation of a friend, hears the story of the Buddha's enlightenment. Under the Bodhi tree, he imagines the stillness, the hours of unbroken sitting, the courage it must have taken to face all inner demons without turning away. He wonders if he could ever sit still for even 5 minutes. And yet, when the monk invites the group to close their eyes and follow their breathing, he tries. 1 breath in, 1 breath out, a moment of quiet. He does not know it yet, but this is his first taste of meditation, not as a rule, not as a ritual, but as refuge. For Thich Nhat Hanh, the breath is the bridge between body and mind, the anchor that brings us back to now. He teaches that the simplest practice, breathing in, I calm my body, breathing out, I smile, can be a doorway into profound peace. For young people who live with constant stimuli, constant distraction, this simplicity is not a retreat, but a return. It is like discovering a soft place to rest inside themselves. Vesak becomes more than a celebration. It becomes an invitation. It is not merely the commemoration of a lifelong past, but the reminder that awakening is available here and now. It does not require renouncing the world, but learning how to be fully present in it. The young girl opens her eyes. Around her, people are still sitting in meditation. The monk's voice echoes softly. When you walk, just walk. When you breathe, just breathe. She looks at her own hands, her lap, the rhythm of her chest rising and falling. She feels, for the first time in a long time, that she does not have to be anywhere else. She does not have to prove anything right now. She only needs to be here. This moment of contact may appear small from the outside. No one applauds. No dramatic transformation unfolds. But something shifts. The boy smiles more that afternoon. The girl notices her footsteps on the way home. Another teenager, quiet and introverted, finds comfort in the monk's words about interbeing, that we are not separate, that our joy and sorrow are connected to the trees, the sky, and each other. For some, these teachings spark questions. What does it mean to be free from suffering? Do I have to let go of ambition? Can I be mindful while still being modern? Still using a phone? Still pursuing dreams? These are important questions. The teachings of the Buddha, when introduced with warmth and openness, do not silence these questions. They embrace them. They say, come and see. Do not believe blindly. Touch the Dharma with your own life. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke about beginner's mind, not in the sense of ignorance, but in the sense of freshness. When young people encounter the Dharma for the first time, they are not burdened with years of doctrine. They come as they are, curious, skeptical, hopeful, and because of that, their insights can be pure and profound. One young woman, after hearing about compassion, shares that maybe compassion also means forgiving herself. No one told her that was allowed, but now she sees that it is not only allowed, it is necessary. Sometimes, Vesak comes to a young person, not in a temple, but in the silence after a heartbreak, in the questioning of identity, in the hunger for something deeper than achievement. The teachings arrive like a quiet friend, saying, I see you, I am here with you, let us breathe together. And so, the first contact is not about understanding everything. It is about feeling seen. It is about realizing that there is a path of peace available, not just to monks in orange robes, but to students, artists, dreamers, and doubters. It is about recognizing that the Buddha's journey is not locked in history. It is still unfolding, quietly, in the lives of young people everywhere who dare to pause, to listen, to begin again. Perhaps that is the miracle of Vesak. Not only that the Buddha was born, or enlightened, or passed into peace, but that in every moment we choose to stop, to breathe, and to come home to ourselves. The Buddha is born again in us. The Dharma is not something we must chase. It is something we can touch right here, with one mindful step, one open breath, one honest smile. As the Vesak ceremony draws to a close, the young girl looks at the candle in her hands. Its flame is small, but steady. She thinks of what the monk said earlier. One candle can light 1,000 others without losing itself. She does not know yet where her path will lead, but she knows this: something inside her has been lit, and for now, that is enough. 2. Seeds of mindfulness. How young people interpret the teachings. The teachings do not always arrive with thunder. They often come gently, like morning light seeping through a window, or a leaf falling silently to the ground. In the presence of stillness, they begin to take root. For young people, These teachings are not received through grand declarations or complex philosophies, but through the quiet recognition of something deeply familiar. They do not understand everything, but something inside them nods softly. Yes, I know this. Each person receives the teachings in their own way. No two hearts awaken alike. Some approach with skepticism, others with longing. Some laugh, some cry, some do not speak at all. The teachings do not demand uniformity. They honor the unique rhythm of every soul. They are like seeds carried by the wind. Some fall on rocky ground, some are swept away, and some land in the rich soil of a moment when the heart is open, ready. A young girl hears the word compassion and suddenly thinks of the way she speaks to herself when she makes mistakes. She realizes it has never been kind. The word begins to grow inside her, not as an idea, but as a question. What would it mean to be gentle with myself? She does not seek an answer right away. She simply allows the question to stay. A teenage boy hears about non-attachment and imagines giving up all the things he loves. It frightens him, but then he begins to understand it differently, not as a demand to abandon joy, but as an invitation to hold joy with open hands, not to cling, but to appreciate. Slowly, his fear softens. He notices the difference between grasping and loving, between possessing and being present, in schools, in cafes, in bedrooms lit by the blue glow of screens. The teachings find their way, sometimes in the form of a simple quote, sometimes in a shared story, sometimes in silence. A college student scrolls past a video of someone speaking about mindful breathing. She tries it, just once. Inhale, exhale, a pause. She forgets to try again the next day. But something has already shifted. A door has opened. Even slightly, the seeds grow slowly. A young man begins to notice how quickly he reacts in conversations, how his words sometimes carry heat rather than care. He remembers a practice he read about, pausing before responding. He tries it. At first, it feels awkward, but with each pause, space opens. His responses become softer, more grounded. His relationships begin to change. For another, the teaching arises in the awareness of sound, the hum of traffic, the laughter of friends, the rustle of leaves outside the window. What once felt like background noise becomes a symphony of presence. She does not call it mindfulness. She simply calls it listening. Young people do not always use the same words as traditional teachings, but the spirit is there, in the way they choose silence over shouting, in how they begin to observe their thoughts instead of becoming them, in the way they let go of needing to win every argument. These are not small things. They are signs of something blooming. Some begin to practice in quiet ways. A student places a stone on her desk, not for decoration, but as a reminder to return to herself when she feels overwhelmed. A boy begins writing down one thing he's grateful for each night before sleep. These gestures may seem simple, but they carry deep power. They are acts of remembrance, remembrance of stillness, of clarity, of who they truly are beneath the noise. Others begin to question what they've long believed. They ask, can I still want to succeed if I also want to live peacefully? How do I forgive someone who doesn't say sorry? If everything is impermanent, why does it all matter? These questions are not obstacles. They are openings. They are doorways into deeper exploration, into discovering that the teachings are not about escaping life, but entering it fully. There is a tenderness in this stage of growth. Young people may feel uncertain, wobbly. The teachings encourage them not to rush. There is no finish line. The journey is not about becoming perfect, but becoming real. The practice is to show up, again and again, in presence, to notice, to breathe, to choose peace even when it would be easier to avoid, to numb, to distract. Sometimes, The teachings appear through the body. A dancer becomes aware of her breath between movements. A runner begins to feel the rhythm of his feet on the earth as an anchor. In these moments, awareness is not separate from life. It is woven into it. There is no need to retreat to a distant mountain. The mountain is already within. In communities, some gather to share. Circles form, not to teach or correct, but to listen. One person speaks of their anxiety, another of their loneliness. The circle holds it all without judgment. This too is practice, the act of being with each other in truth and tenderness. Here, the teachings are not spoken. They are lived. There are also moments of resistance. A young person may feel overwhelmed by the idea of suffering. Is it all pain? They wonder. But then they learn that the teachings do not end at suffering. They point beyond it. They reveal that within suffering, there can be understanding. Within pain, there can be healing. And within healing, there is always the chance to begin again. Gradually, the teachings reshape perception. One begins to see that anger is not only fire, but also a signal, something asking to be held. Understood that joy is not in constant stimulation, but in quiet connection, that love does not need possession to be real, and that the present moment, once ignored, is actually full of wonders. This transformation does not happen all at once. It unfolds, like petals opening to the morning sun, like a river carving its path over years. It is patient, organic, honest. It does not announce itself loudly, but it is deeply alive. The greatest gift of these teachings for young people is the reminder that they do not have to wait until later in life to wake up. They do not have to postpone peace. They can live it now, in their studies, their friendships, their families, their art. They can learn to be here, fully, even in uncertainty, even in sorrow, even in laughter. As they begin to trust this path, their lives become the teaching, not through sermons, but through presence, through the way they walk, speak, listen, love. They may not call it Dharma, but it lives in them, in the space between reaction and response, in the choice to return to the breath, in the courage to open the heart again and again. When a young person tends to these seeds through patience, awareness, and compassion, they do not only transform themselves, they offer a new way of being to the world, a way that is rooted in care, a way that does not rush to fix, but dares to stay, a way that remembers the sacred in the ordinary. And so the teachings continue, not preserved in books, but carried in footsteps, in eyes that see clearly, in voices that speak truth, in lives that reflect a deeper knowing that peace is possible and that it begins in this very moment. 3. Quiet transformation. Vesak is a way of living, not just a day. The bell rings at the close of the Vesak ceremony. Candles are extinguished one by one. Incense smoke slowly lifts into the darkened sky. People fold their hands, bow gently, and return to their homes. The ritual has ended. The celebration is complete. But something remains. Not everyone may recognize it. Not everyone may speak of it. Yet, in the quiet spaces within, a subtle transformation begins to take form, soft as breath, steady as the turning of seasons. For many young people, Vesak does not leave behind souvenirs or certificates. It leaves behind questions. It leaves behind presence. And from these, a new way of living slowly begins to unfold. It is not dramatic. It is not broadcasted. It does not ask for attention. But it reshapes the way they walk, speak, think, and relate to the world around them. In the days following Vesak, a teenage boy who once scrolled endlessly through social media begins to notice his breath more often. He does not delete his accounts. He does not renounce technology. But before picking up his phone, he pauses just for a moment. He becomes aware of the urge, and sometimes, only sometimes, he chooses to simply sit and breathe. It is a small shift, almost invisible, but in that pause, there is freedom. A young girl begins to notice how she listens to others. She no longer feels the need to reply instantly, to fix, to offer advice. She allows her friend to speak, to cry, to be silent. She offers her presence, nothing more. But in doing so, her friend says later, "I felt safe for the first time in weeks." This is transformation, not the kind that changes headlines, but the kind that heals hearts. Vesak is not a conclusion, it is a doorway. Through it, young people glimpse the possibility of a different kind of life, not one separate from the world, but one deeply embedded in it, lived with awareness. They begin to discover that peace is not a reward waiting at the end of long effort. It is something available in each moment, if they are willing to touch it. There is a quiet beauty in this kind of awakening. No declarations are needed, no sudden vows. Instead, a new rhythm appears. A student begins to walk slower on her way to class. A young man chooses to speak more gently with his parents. A child lights a candle each evening, not as obligation, but as a silent offering of gratitude. These acts may seem insignificant, but they carry within them the seeds of a deeper transformation, one that changes the entire landscape of being. Some young people begin to see their emotions differently. Anger is no longer an enemy to suppress. It is a visitor to greet with compassion. Fear is no longer a weakness to overcome. It becomes a signal calling for tenderness. They begin to notice that joy does not always arrive in grand gestures, but in small moments. A breeze through a window, the sound of laughter, the warmth of tea in the hands. Vesak becomes not just a memory, but a lens through which they begin to see the sacred in the ordinary. This transformation is not about perfection. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning again and again to what is real, to what is kind, to what is true. A young woman begins to recognize how often she judges herself. She hears the echo of a voice that always demands more, faster, better. But now, she also hears a softer voice inside her, one that says, "You are enough. You are here." She begins to nourish that voice. She writes it in her journal. She whispers it to herself before sleep, and little by little, it begins to shape her days. In this way, Vesak becomes a teacher that does not speak in words, but in patterns of presence. It teaches not only through story, but through stillness, through the way a candle burns slowly, through the way a bowl is washed with care, through the way a breath enters and leaves without force. These are the teachings that endure, not in doctrine, but in daily life. Communities also begin to shift, not through rules, but through shared presence. A group of students meet once a week to sit together in silence. They do not call it meditation. They simply say, "Let's breathe together." Another group begins to eat one meal a day in silence, not as a ritual, but as a way of honoring the food, the farmers, the earth. These choices are born from what was touched during Vesak, not as obligation, but as response. In families, subtle changes begin to ripple. A teenager sets aside her phone during meals. A child thanks their parent without being told. A father learns to listen more fully. These are the echoes of mindful living. They do not demand credit. They are not performed. They are simply lived. What is most powerful about this transformation is its humility. It does not seek applause. It does not require recognition. It asks only for sincerity, for attention, for the willingness to return, even after forgetting. A boy who once dismissed all forms of spirituality begins to walk barefoot in the park, feeling the earth beneath his feet. He does not call it practice, but it is. It is a remembering. of connection, of home. And still, there are moments of forgetting. There are days when the noise is loud, when the old habits return. But even then, the seed planted during Vesak does not vanish. It remains, quietly waiting, in a quiet moment. It may speak again, not in words, but in a feeling, a tug toward stillness, a longing for something softer. That is the gift of the path. It is always available. Over time, the teachings no longer feel like something separate from the self. They are not rules to follow. They are not ideas to debate. They become woven into the fabric of being. A girl finds herself breathing deeply during a difficult conversation, not because she was told to, but because something within her remembers that she can, that she does not need to rush, that she can meet the moment with openness, not resistance. Young people discover that this way of living is not about retreating from the world. It is about being fully present within it, with clarity, with compassion, with courage. It is about seeing that every action, no matter how small, carries the potential to bring peace or suffering. And in this awareness, a new kind of responsibility emerges, not heavy, but joyful, a responsibility to live with care, to walk gently, to speak truth, to love well. What began as a single day of celebration becomes a path walked daily, not always with certainty, but always with sincerity. Vesak becomes more than a date on the calendar. It becomes the quiet revolution of everyday life, lived in awareness. When asked what changed, many cannot explain. They say, "I don't know. I just feel different. I notice more. I care more. I feel more like myself." These are not surface-level shifts. They are signs that something deep is taking root. In this way, the spirit of Vesak lives on, not only in temples or teachings, but in the way young people carry themselves, in the way they touch the world around them, with patience, with humility, with presence. A flower does not bloom loudly. It opens silently, in stillness, in sunlight. So too does the transformation, born from true contact with the path. And those who witness it may not see fireworks, but they may feel something unmistakable, the presence of peace, the birth of a new way, the return of something timeless, quiet, luminous, alive. Thank you for joining us on Trandy Wisdom. As we've seen in Vesak Reaction, young people react to Buddhist teachings. Transformation doesn't always begin with understanding. It begins with presence, when young hearts touch the Dharma, not as something to memorize, but something to live. A quiet awakening begins, and perhaps that is the true spirit of Vesak, not just a day of remembrance, but a gentle return to what truly matters. Until next time, may you walk gently, breathe deeply, and live each moment as a step toward peace.